So what do you really think?
But, so I would say that even as important as the concept of Jewish peoplehood and the value of unity is, that too can be an idol. If you ask me, of course, I would say Christianity's critique over Judaism over most of history has been motivated by not the most noble of impulses, to put it mildly. But I think that there is a critique that was already to be found in the prophets of Israel. It's already there in Amos. And maybe Jesus is echoing that. And I think there were serious Christian theologians who did understand that. And that is that in everything in life there are dangers when you can make a means, again, as is the case with land, into an end in itself. And that's not just relevant only to land. It's also relevant with regards to people. People is not the highest moral value. It's what Sharon said before, it's human dignity. It's the value of the human person that is the highest social value. And that's what our society has to be told time and time again, which we need to understand more and more deeply all the time. But nevertheless, you are alluding to what is essentially at the moment another spike in the crisis between Israel and the diaspora. And that is because, as you say, 85% of North American Jews are not Orthodox. Whereas in Israel, we have a political scientist of ours, one of the most well-known, who likes to say has a witticism, which is not 100% correct, but nevertheless it's an interesting insight. He says everybody in Israel is Orthodox. You're either ultra-Orthodox, often incorrectly called Hasidic. Hasidim are only one component within ultra-Orthodoxy. Or you're modern Orthodox, like us. Or you're traditional Orthodox, probably like most. Or you're not so traditional Orthodox, like very many. Or you're non-Orthodox Orthodox, like some. Or you're anti-Orthodox Orthodox, like some as well. But everybody's Orthodox. And there's some truth to that, because the Judaism that is the point of reference for Israeli society is the Judaism that's been known from time immemorial, as it were. And Jews, whether they are from here, from the Middle East, or from North Africa, or from the Near East, of near Asia, or from Central or Eastern Europe, the only Judaism they knew was Orthodoxy. Because the form of Judaism that you know most dominantly in America is a product of the most modern world and of the most modern societies, which most of these have not come through. And therefore in Israeli society, if we take these anti-Orthodox Orthodox, for example, Judaism as authentic is seen as Orthodox. And especially the ultra-Orthodox. And because you're not going to be so stupid as to dress like that or to think like that or to be such an idiot, therefore you can't be Orthodox, therefore you must be like me. In a way, this kind of almost Manichaean way of viewing identity saves me from having to deal with the serious questions of finding real religious and spiritual meaning in the modern world, because these are the only two alternatives. To some extent, these extremes live off each other within Israeli society. But it means that the point of reference is orthodoxy for everything. Now, that's changing, and were the society to be open and free, surveys show that that witticism of Professor Avineri really won't hold water. Because overwhelmingly, something like 70 to 80% of Israelis want to be able to have a Jewishly pluralistic society and are in favor of giving rights to reform and conservative movements, even if they themselves are not. Surveys also show that the vast majority of Israelis, for example, for marriage, would have an Orthodox marriage. But that vast majority still wants there to be those particular freedoms. What's preventing those freedoms, like what's preventing so many things with regards to civil society in Israel, is the artificiality rendered by our politics of coalition. And these coalitions mean that no major party has ever had enough votes to be able to rule independently. They've always had their coalitions. And tragically, rather than the major parties coming together to reflect the democratic will of the majority, they have rather, in order to increase their power, preferred to take in minority coalition partners to maintain their power and interests. And therefore there's been a quid pro quo. And these ultra-Orthodox parties have demanded their dowry in return for the political marriage. And within this present coalition context, there's no way that the monopoly, which actually goes back, of course, to the Turks, because in the the Turkish era there was only orthodoxy, and the system of matters of personal status, in which marriage and divorce and matters of family law are all in the hands of religious authorities, Muslim for Muslims. You know, the State of Israel maintains Sharia courts for the Muslims, and therefore the Qadis, the judges on the Sharia courts of Israel, are paid like high court judges to be able to provide for all the needs within the Muslim community. Christian courts, in theory, could also be maintained by the state. Interesting enough, those Christian communities that have courts have avoided getting from the state, I think very wisely, even though the state does maintain churches and areas like that. And of course, the Jewish courts are maintained in that particular regard. And the Jewish courts means exclusively Orthodox courts, which means that all matters of personal status, marriage and divorce within Israel, are exclusively in the hands of Orthodox, which means that 85% of Jews in North America, their rabbis have no status in Israel. So ironically, Israel, the State of Israel, guarantees religious pluralism. The rights of Christians and of Muslims are maintained. And if you're a Sunni, we have no Shia Muslims here to speak of, and there's no real reform movement. Therefore, any Sunni imam or sheikh who were to come here and conduct a marriage, that marriage would be recognized by the state. And we have 12 Christian denominations, even though we have only about 120,000 Arab Christian citizens of Israel, probably another extra 50,000 Christians who've come from the former Soviet Union, and of course something like 100,000 Christian foreign workers here. But with regards to 120,000 Arab Israeli Christians, 12 different denominations. And therefore, for the vast majority of people coming over, your priest, your pastor, your minister would be able to perform a marriage here that would be recognized by the state. But 85% of Jews, rabbis, have no status here, and their marriage will not be recognized by the state. So ironically, in a Jewish state, you have religious pluralism, but you don't have Jewish religious pluralism. And that is a source of enormous distress to North American Jews. Now, there have been recent controversies that have erupted to do with the Western Wall thing. In my opinion, these are excuses or manifestations of the problem. They're not the source of the problem. And there have been issues where people have gone, as it were, to score points over. They're not going to change anything in this regard. If you ask me, and you're to say to me, how can you bring about Jewish pluralism in Israel? The answer is very simple. You've got to break the monopoly of the chief rabbinate. Now, you better stop this too on the web, because I've never been